Senator Rob Portman, Republican, joins us now. So I believe you're going to visit the border at the end of this week. Are you going to investigate conditions at these detention facilities?
Stuart, we will. We're going to the Centralized Processing Center, which is the big processing center in the McAllen area. This is where, frankly, most of the refugee crisis is occurring in southern Texas. So you have an opportunity to see firsthand what's going on, see what the conditions are, but also sit down with the officials who are on the ground, the Department of Homeland Security officials, the Customs and Border Protection folks, Border Patrol, HHS, which are handling the unaccompanied kids, and really hear firsthand what's going on and how we can come up with better solutions.
I don't know what we can do when 1,000 people a day walk across the border, declare themselves eligible for asylum, and have to be put into a detention facility which is already overcrowded. I don't know what we do about this, but I do know that the Democrats are making this a sort of a scandal that President Trump is responsible for. Do you think our president is responsible for what's going on at the border?
No, he's not, but he's trying to come up with solutions to deal with it. And obviously, it's a crisis. It's not a manufactured crisis, which some Democrats were saying. I think they acknowledged that finally about 10 days ago, Stuart, when they finally agreed to support the humanitarian assistance. Some of the same people who were complaining about the conditions wouldn't send the funding down there to deal with what is clearly a humanitarian crisis, as well as a drug crisis, as well as an immigration crisis. So in terms of solutions, one thing that I've been promoting, as I think you know, is a refugee alternative. In other words, to tell these people who live in Central America that the traffickers are wrong, you shouldn't come to our border. You should go to a processing center run by the United Nations, by the way. There's several already in Central America and one in Mexico, and have yourself presented there to be able to determine whether you qualify for asylum. The criteria for refugees and asylums is the same. It's the credible fear standard. Again, UN does this all over the world. This will be an opportunity for people to make their case, for those who qualify to be able to come, not just to America, but actually to be resettled through the refugee resettlement efforts. But as you know, ultimately, only 15% of these cases, these claims of asylum, are being granted. So for the vast majority of people, they would not be permitted to come under this. And by the way, some would go to other countries, not just the United States, as happens with the Refugee Processing Center. So this is I think this is a very good alternative that would keep people from making that long and dangerous journey north.
How can you argue against the proposal you're putting out there? United Nations runs this. It's an attempt to stop this mass migration out of Central America. It's not, I'm not going to say it's an easy fix, but it is a fix. How do you argue against that?
I think it is. I've talked to a number of Democrats about it. Some have been willing to talk about it, and that's great. Others have said, well, that doesn't allow people to have the due process. It actually does, and it's an international due process. It's also something that you may remember President Obama did at one point with regard to the unaccompanied children. He allowed them to actually apply in their home country to be able to deal with what at that time was a surge of young people, you remember, coming to the border. So it actually goes back to an Obama administration proposal. I will say, with regard to the administration, with whom I've talked a lot about this, they would have to raise the refugee caps, because right now the cap is limited to 2,000 from Central America. And you have to assume, based on the numbers we know, 15%, that there would be more than 2,000 coming. But I think that's something that is far better than the current situation. As you know, you said it so well. People come to the border, they eventually just walk into our country.
Senator Portman, would you come back to us and tell us what you saw when you go to the border later this week?
I sure will, Stuart. And thanks for following this so closely, too. And I think, you know, we have to stop being partisan about this. It's a crisis. It's an American crisis. We need to deal with it.
It really is. Senator, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks, Stuart.
See you real soon. Thank you very much. The women's national team